Nice to meet you.
Nathan. Nice to meet you.
Do you have any sort of specific questions for me? Like
Well,
sort of meta questions for me, like who I think I am, why do I think I can help you, or
oh,
other related sort
I'm
of meta
familiar with
questions?
you from the Ember community, and have seen your commits in list view and all that. You're in the core team, is that right?
Yeah, I am.
So yeah, I'm Nathan. I work at
All of
Intel. I
my
could give
time.
my little spiel. So we've been working on this cloud management app, sort of cloud orchestration, and it's been in sort of demo phase for a while. And we're wanting to release it pretty soon, or kind of at least do some partner stuff. And this is one thing that's holding us back. But yeah, I'm from Portland, so kind of happy that the Tilda team has moved into town. So to chat with
Yeah,
Tom and those guys. But yeah, in terms of the
awesome.
repository, um, I
I
mean,
was just I was just in Portland actually,
oh yeah,
December. So I came in on a Friday night and I flew out on a Sunday night. So we had our core team meetings. We have like every
oh
two to
cool,
3 months we have a
yeah,
in-person meeting. So it was in Portland for obvious reasons. So, but
nice.
I basically took off from work at 6 here in Manhattan. Took the train, took a cab to the plane, jumped on the plane, landed in Portland at 1 a.m. Had two full day sessions, and then at
Oh
10
man,
o'clock at night I flew out of Portland and went to work Monday morning. So
wow.
I didn't get to enjoy much of Portland. I saw like bits and pieces of it. It seemed
And that was your
nice and
first time in
foggy while I
Portland?
was there.
Yeah, you have to come back.
Yeah, I will in
And then,
for EmberConf.
good,
I'll be
good,
there
good.
in
Yeah.
March, I think, end of March.
Yep. And you work at Yap,
Anyways,
is that right?
I do. Yeah, yeah,
Right on.
yeah. We're one of the early adopters,
Yeah,
and we
and so
love it. It's great.
that's all mobile stuff, right?
We do desktop and mobile. Yeah, and so we do two things basically. So we a large part of the business has always been working on Ember, improving Ember, so that we can use it. Because we believe in the idea, we believe in the motivations, the architectural choices, we believe in these things.
Yeah.
But early on, we were doing one of the first mobile apps, and there were performance issues and there were consistency issues, so we had no choice, and we're totally interested in and willing to help out, so we did.
Yeah,
And from that, we have I think we have 7 or 8 Ember projects that we deploy and use and maintain on a regular basis. And because of this, we have a lot of experience. We know all of the pain. We know all of the joy. So when
yeah.
we find something, we spend a lot of our free time, spare time, and a little bit of work time when needed on the framework itself. So I've been using Ember since it was Sprout Core. It's been a long time,
Oh, nice.
and I've seen it grow. So I have enough. We have enough context to know why things have changed, which is good, and how
Good.
to make them better. And so as the company grew, we kind of realized that we're spending a lot of time and energy on just improving Ember, improving the ecosystem. But we sometimes made improvements and we just really couldn't justify the extra 2 weeks it would take to push it out so other people could use it. So there's a lot of solutions we have that we couldn't. So we basically split our work up. So we do consulting and training to allow us to push some of that work forward as
Hmm.
well as our own product. So it's good. It's lots of fun. Satisfies
Great.
my ADD and gives me a lot of Ember exposure, which is good.
Yeah, well, it sounds like you're the perfect person to maybe give us some ideas about how to improve our performance.
I suspect I will be able to help a little bit, or at least point you down the right path, or give you
Yeah, for
hope.
sure.
So
Yeah, anything would be helpful at this point. So basically, the pain point right now is our VMs page. We're basically doing a huge call to a simple kind of Ember data compatible VMs API, and there's a maximum number of VMs actually. We don't really I don't support more than 2,000 VMs. So I'm kind of thinking I can do the one call and get to the 2,000 VMs,
okay.
but obviously maybe not render them all at the same time. And as
Yep.
a side note, if list view ends up not working, we just added pagination to the API, so I could do pagination. However,
Yep.
list view was awesome. I'm really hoping we can get that to be performant. So that's
Yeah, I
caffeine.
suspect it's not list view that's the performance problem.
Yeah,
So list view does have a few quirks, and it has one specific thing. I have the standing branch locally. I just got to find some time and bandwidth to push it over the edge. But I have a patch to make it work with crazy ratios. So currently, if you have like weird ratios that don't actually make sense, there are sometimes some artifact you see at the very end. So I have a patch for that. I need
Cool.
probably another 4 or 5 hours to get that over. Because so basically that patch, I believe it works correctly, but so ListView has like 600 tests or something. Every one of those tests broke because I changed like a fundamental recycling semantic to make it work,
Uh-huh.
and so I have to go through each one of these tests and confirm that they've broken. I have to confirm that they have broken in a way that we accept. So
Yeah.
I just need to find.
Weird,
Anyway,
I
so
guess.
we should. So can I run this app, or do I need a backend that
Yes.
I can't connect to?
Yeah, let's do some debugging. Yeah, there's what I put on GitHub. It has no backend, so I've basically done a scrape of our API
Okay.
and just popped it a whole bunch of JSON files into the API folder. So if you just do I would assume you have Grunt installed, maybe.
I have Grunt installed. Yeah.
So
So
if you
here's a
just
tip for Grunt, if you didn't know. If you, in fact, install Grunt into your node modules, change your global path to also look in .modules.bin, you don't have to share a single Grunt CLI version between all your apps.
you're just saying install Grunt locally.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
causes me nothing but grief when that doesn't happen, because you have like one version and another. Anyways,
So
I'm just doing a npm install and a Bower install right now. So.
great, yeah. So if you do the npm install, after that you should just be able to go ahead and do Grunt server, and it'll load up.
Okay. Sounds good. Just waiting for npm to do its thing.
Yeah, I think there are a number of dependencies in there. So the performance problem is mostly in scrolling, and
Okay.
we run through it, but I'm don't know if it's just that I have tons of views. We have, say, I don't know, 10 or so columns, a bunch of icons, and a couple like little widgets and things. And the handlebars templates, there's a template called VMs row handlebars, and that has some logic. So I don't know if all the ifs and thens are creating virtual views. Although I guess I'm using the group helper too, so I thought that would simplify things. But anyway, so
Yeah, so the switches will still cause some overhead for sure. All right, so I'm looking in scripts, templates, and what was the template you said? Row, node rows, is that it?
it's VMs row.
I found it. Sorry, I'm used to underscores, not the caramelized.
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, so the first thing is so definitely the number of like nested ifs and nested views are a thing that just is going to cost. There's basically no way around
There's a
them.
performance cost to inserting views. So maybe one thing I could do, I have a view for every single time we want to use a tooltip. It's wrapping.
Yeah.
Like,
So the cost of the view is, yeah, it's not. So here's the thing: the views are expensive, but it's also the bindings that are expensive. And if you think about a list has, so this one probably has, I don't know, 50 bindings, I think.
Yeah.
The cost of those is fairly high, but there's a few tricks maybe we can do without having to change anything up front. And that is, you have a lot of code here. What's the list view item view you're using? Just the default one?
Let me look there. I do have a list-view.js, which is extending list view.
Yeah, you're using list item view. 1 second here.
Oh yeah, so the item view class.
Yeah.
Let's see.
All right, so list view is a little bit raw, but there's also like a more caveat, higher performance version of the item view. Let me see if I can grab it for you. It's the reusable list item view. Let me put it into the. Crap! I opened up the Q&A thing. Come back sidebar. All right, so I'll put it into the group chat here. So basically, there's a reusable list view class. So one of the things that's happening is when you're recycling the views, you're actually blowing away a lot more than you expect, because the context of the view is changing. So when an Ember view's context changes, the view currently forcibly re-renders. which mitigates a lot of the benefits you could get if, in fact, all that changed was not the context, but rather a property, right? So by changing the context, you kind of blow away stuff you don't really want to blow away, and you mitigate some of the performance that you could get out of the list view. Although it does come with some extra caveats. What I just showed you there is what we use. So we at Yap use the list view. And that's why the reason why we have the list view is we have mobile lists. We have like infinitely long mobile photo galleries and stuff. So we had no choice but to do something like this. But we personally used this reusable list item view.
Okay.
And what it basically does is it makes your context a proxy that stays fixed. So the context of the view never changes. Okay. Instead, when the context is set, we set the proxy's context. Sorry. I'm assuming you understand proxies and how they work and stuff. Mm-hmm. Is this true, or should I give you a quick?
Well, yeah. I mean, isn't a controller an example of a proxy, which is proxy?
Yeah, an object controller is an example of a proxy. Uh-huh. So I'm just gonna go ahead and explain a bunch of stuff. If at any point you're like, Steph, I'm a little bit confused. You explain something poorly. Just stop me, and I will do my best to explain that particular idea. All right. So. Yes, an object controller is an example of a proxy. An array controller is sort of an example of a proxy. The promised proxy stuff that's used in Ember data is an example of a proxy. And what the proxy does in this version of Ember is it allows the context to remain fixed and merely the bindings on the context to update, which won't cause the entire view to be re-rendered unexpectedly. So you'll get more performance out of it. But at every view level, if you have a view and its context changes, it's going to cause that view to re-render. Okay. So we have plans. So right now we're actually working on, I'll tell you what the future solution is. I'll tell you what the solution I think that we can do today. So the future solution is we're working really hard on HTML bars and a view refactoring. Right. And we basically, in some sort of very tuned situations, we have Ember outperforming, or HTML bars outperforming React in terms of DOM update performance. I just saw that. Which is that is a very contrived example, but interestingly, that you saw that JS Fiddle or whatever. Yeah. That was put together by the React guys. That wasn't put together by us. So we've been working with them and talking with them and stuff. So they actually put it together, and they were pretty impressed by the fact that this happened. There are places where our idea will break down, and there's places where their ideas break down. Yeah. But that's going to be a massive performance improvement. So if you sit tight and we work on these things, we're going to get a massive performance improvement in hopefully the next few months. We hope to have a beta of it out for EmberConf in 2 months. So that'll be good. But turns out you need to ship something, you need to have performance today. So we need to come up with some solutions today. So the first thing I would say is let's start with, yeah.
Well, okay, so the one thing that I should mention is that I don't really need bindings. I don't need a lot of bindings in my table because the way the app works is that it's basically on a polling loop, and I'm just pulling in new data on a polling loop. So it's not like, okay. I mean, let's see. Yeah, there aren't really any.
Man, I'm still waiting for this npm install to run.
Is it not going?
Okay, so basically your data actually doesn't need to be bound. It can be totally unbound.
Yeah, so I don't know if that means I use a whole bunch of unbound helpers combined with handlebars.
So the group view should be what you want for that.
Group helper?
Yeah.
Okay, I am using that. I guess I'm wrapping list view in the group helper.
Yeah. I'm surprised this npm thing is still taking forever. I really just want to kind of dive in and get a good glimpse of what the perf is having trouble. So one of the things with the group helper is you also have to mark the rows. Ideally, you want to mark the rows also as sort of grouped, so you can in fact do that. But let's.
You might put a group helper
before I tell you a bunch of things, I actually just want to. Sorry.
You might do a group helper on the top level around list view and also surrounding each row as well.
Actually, the group helper has like a hook into our collection view and each view stuff.
Oh.
But it may not have it in the collection view, so it might not work that well with the list view yet. Just thinking about it in my mind. But basically, the group helper has a second case where it can be used with lists, and it can say that the group is not the entire list, but rather it is each entry in the list.
Uh-huh.
All right. So in each, it is an extra flag that you say grouped rows equals true. This will, I believe, unfortunately not work with list view.
Okay.
Anyways, before I tell you a bunch of random stuff, I just really want to actually just see where the performance is going on us.
Yeah, for sure.
I hate like speculatively doing. Didn't NPM just get like 200 grand? Isn't this supposed to be fast now? Didn't they promise us that giving them money would make this amazingly fast?
Yeah.
Okay, so while we're waiting, while we're waiting, there are like little tricks and hacks you can do to improve the performance. And that's basically dropping the need for views if you don't need them, right? You don't use them if you don't need to. But I think we can make the performance better. But as I was going through your app, I noticed a few other things which we can probably take a glance at while I'm waiting for all this fun stuff to install.
Okay. Does it look like it's just taking a long time to download everything, or is it running errors?
It has errored twice on various things, and so I've tried to do it multiple times. Oh, it looks like it's done. All right. There's a few places in your app where inside your app you're referencing app again. And ideally, what you want to use is the injection framework, the dependency injection framework, to not have to have these global dependencies intermixing with each other. It's a little bit of a refactoring.
There were a couple like models that we did a really long time ago where we weren't using Ember data, and we just were like, we don't want to split this out quickly. Are you talking about models where it's just like app dot model?
No, I saw it in your controllers and stuff too. There's a lot of places where you do app dot. That's not a big of a deal, but there's another one where you have lists and lists that are being sorted and filtered.
Yeah.
And I would suggest looking into the computed array computed and reduce computed macros. There's like Ember computed filter, Ember computed sort, that stuff. Not only is it a nicer DSL, but it's much faster because it actually will detect changes. And if it detects items 3 and 4 change, it will only update items 3 and 4, basically. So it'll, rather than rebuilding the whole array every time, which causes a re-render of the whole array, it merely returns a constant array and mutates the various entries that needed to change inside of it.
Great.
Which, if you have a large list of things that's sorted and filtered, would potentially increase the performance. Not just algorithmically, but rendering-wise. We just have to do less work in the end. If, in fact, 3 and 4 only change, but it's causing an entire array to change, it's going to force a re-render. All right, so I see Sam, a bunch of blue stuff.
Good.
All right, so let me. How do I log into this bad boy?
It doesn't matter what you put in for that one.
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. Okay, awesome. I'm going to share my screen with you.
Okay.
Or explicitly that browser window. Oh, one sec. Let me see which version of Chrome I'm running right now. Let me switch version of Chrome here quickly. The Canary build has better tooling. All right.
So if you click on the VMs tab, that's the one that has issues. Nodes, the Nodes tab is also using list view, but I think this example just doesn't have a whole lot of nodes. But if you go to VMs and try to scroll around,
jump over to the VM.
My guess is that, and it's actually very different depending on which browser you're using. Firefox basically can't scroll at all, but you should still be able to. If you try to scroll, it should kind of lock up for a little bit.
Yeah, I'm not even getting it to load. Oh, there we go.
Oh.
So it was even a little bit sluggish on initial load. All right, maybe something is consuming all of my resources here unexpectedly. Grunt is consuming 100% of one of my CPUs.
Hmm.
All right, let me just kill this window and try it again quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Bum, bum. Okay, I got it loading. Let me reshare that pane with you. For some reason, my Chrome Canary was feeling pretty rough here.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the things that's going to be a little bit hard to deal with is the 404s are going to also be affecting the throughput here, but I'm going to see if I can just ignore the fact that that's happening. All right, so let's see if we can get some high offenders. Okay, so it does look like, so the first one thing we should look at is just to make sure we can remove any recalculate styles and layouts that are occurring, ideally. So that is not necessarily Ember related, but it will definitely cause some like abrupt UI performance when it happens. Are you familiar with relayouts and recalculate styles?
So, no, not really.
Okay. You're seeing my window,
is
correct?
that like from the browser actually recalculating CSS styles?
Yeah. And this will we basically need to figure out what are the biggest issues and what are the smallest issues. But I'm going to start at like what I see here, and then we're going to see if we can dig into other things. So if you write to the DOM and read from the DOM, there's a chance that you writing to the DOM first has invalidated the DOM, and in order for you to read from the DOM needs to recalculate itself. So ideally what you want to do is you want to batch your reads and your writes in such a way that you do all of your writes, then all of your reads, or all of your reads and then all of your writes. Otherwise, what will happen is while you're doing JavaScript code, you're going to write JavaScript code that's going to be like, hey, DOM, tell me some information. And in some scenarios, the DOM is going to have to be like, well, you know what, Steph, I didn't know the information yet because I was waiting until you're done all your JavaScript stuff before I'm going to draw anything, but now you're making me draw it. So in theory, what happens then is you cause multiple draws to happen or multiple layouts to happen. So if you ask for sizing information, if you ask for height, if you're going to ask for offset width, you're going to force a relayout. And what basically happens then is you're going to be sad. I can actually give you a quick example here. I was actually working on a run loop tutorial to explain. All right, so this isn't syntax highlighted, but can you bear with me? Can you see this well? Actually, no, I'm going to just share this link with you. And you can take a look as well. You can use my screen as a reference guide for what I'm pointing at. So consider this following example. I'm going to create 3 divs, foobar baz. I'm going to assign height to 1. I'm going to ask for its offset height, which is going to cause a recalculate style and a relayout. I'm going to do the right. So this is bad example. Good example is the example below. So I write, read, which causes one recalculate to happen, followed by just basically cached reads.
Yeah.
All right. anyways, so that is a quick TLDR of what a recalculate style and a relayout
Okay.
means. And often what happens is if you trace down into these guys, look, we have even more. So as soon as we jump into here, we see even more relayouts. So there's a layout happening here. So we're causing the document, and each one of these layouts is actually costing 3 milliseconds.
Yeah.
But not just that, it totally blocks the UI thread as well.
Could that be because I'm trying to resize the list view when the browser changes size?
No,
Is this
so
something?
that should be fine, but we're scrolling, and these appear to happen during scroll.
Oh, okay.
And the offender seems to be a jQuery related thing. So let's just do a high level pass of some of these things and see what we can do. And if we actually look here at the so are you familiar with the timeline in Chrome DevTools?
I am not as familiar with the timeline. This is a helpful walkthrough.
Fantastic. So again, I'm going to make assumptions here on what I can do to give you the most value for the time you have allotted with me. But if some point you're like, Steph, we should move on to something else, feel free to stop me. And
this is actually helpful. Yeah, I use the Chrome
I won't be
debugger a lot, but I don't spend much time at all on the timeline, so this would be helpful.
Yeah. So I'm then just gonna go on my various rants and feel free to dial me in.
Okay.
All right. So yeah, I spend an insane amount of time in this, but I also spend a lot of time in V8 opcodes and tracing output to make sure that the Ember code that you serve is going to be faster and faster and faster. So we have been making awesome performance improvements lately, and I'm excited. Anyways, so let me give you a brief high-level introduction of the timeline. So I think you can assume what the timeline means. Basically, it's your app over time. It shows you your memory usage over time. It shows you events that are happening over time. And it also shows you rendering frame costs over time. And basically, there's a little line here. What you want is you want your app's rendering to be below this line. This line is basically 16 milliseconds, 60 frames a second.
Yep.
And you basically want this to be at the very least below this, and hopefully well below it, because other browsers are going to be slower. If we look at this graph here, there is yellow, purple, and green. Yellow is mostly your JavaScript code. Purple is the DOM recalculating, relaying out.
Like
and
for DOM
green is is basically your DOM compositing, painting compositing, all that fun stuff. So occasionally there's profiling you need to do in the compositing area, but here what I can see across the board is the purple area is killing us right now. Once we have the purple area good, the rendering improved, the green one actually looks like one of the next biggest offenders. And for the green one, there are some cool tricks you can do. You can basically mark each row. So we'll talk about that, the painting and relayouts next. But we should focus a little bit on the recalculating style stuff. So let's look at the next. So what I usually do is I just grab one of these bars and I highlight them so I don't have too much information. So let's jump over to the next one and get a good idea of what sort of is going on here and what's causing time and what's causing energy. So if we look in this one, the green is taking up more time than the purple. So it still looks like we're actually recalculating style and doing a layout. There might be no way around it, but it does look like we've done something here that's causing the entire window to relay out. And that's causing 5 milliseconds of time to be burnt. And recalculating the style is causing 6, which is putting us awfully close to those 16 milliseconds that we have to do our work and be fast. But the big killer here is the repaints. So as you can see, when I mouse over this guy here, it actually points to various parts of the code.
Oh, wow.
Where repaints are occurring. And unfortunately not in this version of Chrome, but in the Canary version that for some reason is unhappy with me right now. You can actually see the compositing layers. You can see a 3D version of your app, and it'll show you the compositing layers. So a trick you can do for when you're... So basically, if you see that... This is a bad example because we've already changed the view, but we'll find a later one where it's accurate. If you mouse over this and it's like the entire screen is covered up, but all you did is move like a really small part of it, you might have to hint to the browser that there's a different compositing layer that it should composite with. And there's some tricks that we can do to tell the browser to treat, for example, each row in here as a compositing layer.
Okay.
And that would basically mean when it's compositing, it rather than having to redraw everything, it'll keep each row and merely transform them, which from the painting standpoint would be much faster than having to redraw information that's in the DOM. All right, so let's jump to the next one here. So we've had sort of an example of both paint heavy, draw heavy. So now we're going to look at this guy here, and it looks like we are again we were basically recalculating, and it's super heavy. 5 seconds here, but if we span this guy, oh look, there's another 4 milliseconds here. If we expand this guy, there's another recalculate style. Oh, it looks like Bootstrap is forcing some recalculate styles.
No.
Recalculate style, recalculate style, recalculate style, recalculate style. So my initial feeling here is I think we can get massive performance improvement without changing much of Ember code at all, by basically making sure that we're not going to cause many relayouts and recalculates during scrolls.
So it looks like maybe the offender there might be my views that are inserting sort of Bootstrap tooltips.
Aha, yes. So as you can see, basically, even if it's doing all this work, but it's doing them in single chunks, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
But because it's doing, stopping, it just means actually that the browser is being forced
doing a bunch of
to
stuff.
recalculate and relayout.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a few tricks I think I can help you out with there, but let's keep going through here and see if we can find any other sort of glaringly obvious offenders. Here we have a really big paint, and I suspect what's happening is it's repainting. So this is 40 milliseconds to paint. And as you can see here, it's actually repainting this entire area, which I suspect is the entire viewport here.
Yeah.
Which goes back to my hint from before, where you can actually hint to the browser to make each row its own compositing layer.
And how do you do that?
And you can get some really nice. All right. Yeah, so I've said you can hint. There's a few different ways you can do it. And I want to tell you this with a grain of salt. You should only use this at the very end, basically. Because it is not just... If you don't think about it properly, you can actually cause other performance issues because you begin saturating the GPU or the graphics pipeline with stuff. And luckily, your timeline information will actually provide that for you. And if you see here these little sort of blank lines, those are places where we're doing that. So we still have much headroom for that. But anyways, what you can do is you can give each row or each thing you think is a unit, you can give them a 3D transform or a 2D transform of 0, 0, 0. So basically, it's a transform of nothing. And what that does is it forces the browser, it tells the browser essentially that this should be treated as a compositing layer. There's also other ways to do it, but that is one way to do it. Also, out of curiosity, are you using the latest list view?
I am.
Okay, perfect.
I did just upgrade. I saw a couple commits.
Yeah. So interestingly, if you switch to use the virtual list view, you will get this for free because on browsers that support 2D transforms, we actually do all the scrolling virtually, and we do the 2D transforms, and we actually give you momentum as well. That might not make sense in your project. It might make sense in your project. Something you should figure out.
Yeah, can we explore that a little bit more? Because we aren't really delivering this to mobile platforms, but we do support, I guess, IE 10 plus. So maybe modern browsers that could support transforms, and I don't know if that would help or not.
Yeah, well, the thing is, we actually fall back to like left and top if, in fact, you don't have transforms, and that's what we use in our products, so that we give the mobile experience even to desktop users. Now, I have to say that there are some edge cases, but it's worth at least experimenting with. But if you don't switch, you can just change your CSS style to have each row be one of these groups, but play around with it again because it depends on how much extra information we're forcing. It's a pipelining problem. We need to figure out where we have the most room to do more work and do it there rather than doing it in other places. Anyways, so if you look here, this paint is like super epic,
Yeah.
40 seconds, and it looks, although we have scrolled since then, it's basically telling me everything was repainted.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. But here, if you look here, the compositing layers was incredibly cheap. And so if you have many layers, the compositing is basically can be very fast because the GPU is actually really good at taking a bunch of different segments, and even in software graphics, it's fairly simple to compose more things rather than having to like calculate their actual drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and if you look here, we get into the recalculate style, 2 back-to-back, 2 back-to-back, 2 back-to-back, a layout, a paint, another paint. This paint seems to be smaller. Okay, and mouse event, mouse event, mouse event, recalculate, 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 recalculate. Okay, let's skip ahead to another one here. Calc, layout, 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 paint. So here's another trick, basically. If in fact you're doing this in this single JavaScript frame, you're drawing twice.
Yeah.
And your user's only going to see once, basically. If even, like they might not even notice. So we need to make sure that we only draw once at the very end. This guy here, again, we're getting trolled by painting a large segment. So I think if we force some extra layers, we're going to be a little bit better. But it looks like consistently we're drawing twice when we should only need to draw once, and doing many recalculations. Here's well, here's well, here's well, here's well. This one here is a recalculate style from this one. I suspect is me when I resized the window.
Okay.
And what's going on with this guy here? Oh, we got some Ajax that came in. And we got a scroll event that came in. During the scroll event, we did a bunch of crazy banana stuff. Parse, 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 which is likely us invalidating the contexts. Like I was saying before, if you use the reusable list item view, you don't invalidate the context. You don't incur the re-render if you don't need to.
Okay.
This one here, similar. This one here, again, yeah. So lots of. So here we repainted the whole screen. Here we repainted the whole screen. We relayed out twice. So yeah, basically it seems like we have a sort of common problem, and it looks like on my computer, which is a little bit slow right now, especially because I'm screen sharing, we are burning many frames to the painting and to re-rendering. All right, there's another setting. So you can actually set it here to see, okay, what individual things are actually taking more than 15 milliseconds. Those are basically like so when you're doing performance work, you want to kill unicorns. You don't want to kill, you basically want to hunt the big things. You don't want to hunt the little tiny things that don't give you any benefit. So if you look here, things that are taking more than 15 milliseconds across the entire sort of profile, paint, 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 recalculate style, but this scroll event is likely where we're having some stuff. And we're having these sort of cascades of parse HTMLs. And we got to figure out where those are coming from because they are killing you. And here we have recalculate styles, paints, 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 paints. Saying parse, 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 parse. And the more we parse, the more we paint, the more we do, the more garbage collector cycles we have, and it just kind of falls down. It does look like we have a list view recalculate style here that took 30 milliseconds. Oh, why are we doing top? Okay. That actually seems fine. Okay. All right. So let's do a little bit more. I just want to get a little bit more of a feel without the tools open.
Mm-hmm.
See what's going on. All right. Yeah, we gotta improve this perf a little bit more. Another thing you can do is you can actually are you rendering these tooltips in advance or when someone mouses over?
When somebody mouses over them.
Okay. That's good.
But I think it adds maybe the jQuery event handlers are trying to handle that, and after it did insert element for that view. So there's a view wrapping anything that has a tooltip, which may be not necessary. Maybe it could just do an alt attribute and kind of handle it globally or something.
Yeah, what I would probably do is I would just do the normal jQuery event delegation thing, where you put all the handlers on the parent of the
Right.
entire table, and then when
Yeah.
someone does something, that way you don't have to add all those extra fun things. All right, so we did
Yeah.
that. Now let's jump over to the profiler, and I just want to see what's burning time when we do a scroll. So I'm gonna do a scroll. I'm gonna hit stop, and this gives me a nice little waterfall of what's going on here, or a flame chart, which might not be that useful. So let's start with a heavy. And so 25% of the time we're spending inside of dispatching an event, which means that 25% of the burn is inside of the scroll, which is happening. It also looks like we are burning lots of time in the scroll. Run. Okay. All right, let's flip the chart so that it's top down and see if we can get some. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just trying to get a really good top down of what's going on in the app. So we can try and find the biggest offender and see what we can do to improve it. My window's too narrow to get. It'd be really nice if they had side scrolling here. Yeah, so it looks like we're really burning time by building and destroying those inner views. I suspect
Right.
if we transition to the reusable list view, we're going to have a little bit of benefit here.
Okay.
And if we can remove those inner views, we're going to have a benefit as well.
So meaning if I don't have extra views and things in my cells, that would speed things up.
Yes. In addition to that, using the reusable list view will also likely speed things up.
Mm-hmm.
Right, so that looks like a relatively. Yeah, so basically we're burning a huge amount of time when we're changing stuff, which is notifying observers, sending events, which is causing a re-render, basically. So like we're changing things and it's causing us to re-render stuff. One of the goals would be just to never need to re-render anything and merely update what changed. So if the icon stays the same, we should essentially not have to change the icon. What we should need to change is this text here, this text here, this text here, this text here, this text, this text. It all seems like we're basically changing really simple text. It looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 things basically get changed consistently. And things that don't change don't get changed consistently.
Well, but if half of the things changed, I mean, wouldn't it be just more performant to redo the whole row rather than do like a handful of DOM insertions instead of just like one
not
DOM
necessarily,
insertion?
right? Not necessarily, because you have to regenerate the whole row. You have to recalculate everything that needs to happen for the whole row.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So if you instead do basically update this, update this, update this, but you do it sequentially, the DOM doesn't relay them out till afterwards.
Okay.
So yeah, there's definitely like trade-offs where sometimes it makes more sense to blow away the whole row, and sometimes it really doesn't make sense to blow away the whole row. If does that maybe make sense? Like there is no silver bullet, but basically whatever route is less work is going to be the best. All right, so let's take a look back at the flame chart here, and just gives a little bit more of a distribution of what's
Before we
going
move
on.
Can I throw out another crazy idea that I had, and you can tell me why it's a stupid idea. So I just had this thought that, like, I don't know, maybe when I get the new data in, I don't know, I was just thinking maybe I could just sort of call handlebars myself and just render the row and just like store it, like just kind of store the handlebars on some property and then just.
Yeah, so you basically want to just keep the DOM on hand and.
Yeah, so never. I don't know. So when I'm scrolling, maybe we don't have to, redo handlebars. Doesn't have to do anything, I guess.
Yep.
Is that something that anybody does, or does that make any sense?
Yeah. So it's
You do a lot of
definitely
work at
something
that
you can
pulling
do.
interval, but then maybe not on scroll.
Yeah. So it's definitely something you can do, and it's definitely something that people do, and it's definitely a path that the concept of the list view could take. We again were building this for memory constrained devices, so we couldn't really pool that much. But I do suspect that regardless of what you do, improving the rendering on a per item basis is going to lead to the best
Yeah.
outcome.
Yeah.
But I think your idea is not a bad idea at all.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to grab this cross section here and just kind of see if we can get an idea of what's going on. Okay, get an even smaller cross section. All right. So a scroll event happens. Scroll event does scroll stuff. Update context. Sorry, I guess got to make this smaller so I can actually get to the top and see what's going on in here. So we're actually triggering events, what appears to be during destroying of stuff, which seems to be a little bit wasteful. Yeah, so we're actually, because we're blowing everything away, we're actually recreating your child views for all of your rows every time, which is basically trolling your performance. And what we want to do is we want to either we want to do the pre-rendering solution that you mentioned, or we want to make sure that we just don't rebuild everything every time and only update the 3 things or the 6 things that changed. Because remember, when we're scrolling here, we only have to update the 6 things for each row that's being changed. We don't have to update it for the intermediate ones.
Yeah.
All right. So let's take a look at your code, and let's look at the. So I can share my code with you too as well if you want.
Okay. Sure.
All right. So let's jump over to. Do you have any more specific questions, or should we start jumping into some codes?
Yeah. No. Let's go for it.
All right. All right. So this is the view that you are rendering. All right. So stuff like this, these global things, you want to ideally avoid.
Yeah, that's kind of a holdover from a first poor implementation.
All right. So one thing we could start with, and it's a common thing, is to basically just remove everything and see how fast it is with nothing.
Yeah.
And then add things back. Have you
Yeah.
done this before, or?
Yeah. Well, I started to do it yesterday.
Okay.
and obviously it's much faster. It's pretty fast. It's not
What are
quite
the
as
biggest
fast as
offenders?
like the demo on the list view site, which has no noticeable lag. There's a small amount of noticeable lag, but that might just because it's running inside of a more complicated app. But yeah, that's a good idea. And then you're saying just
Yes.
slowly add properties and hopefully not too many views and see what happens.
Yeah. I think that is the best bet because it's going to also. So we have some ideas. Basically, actually, probably what we should first do is see if we can pinpoint any of those things that are causing layouts and relayouts and repaints and recalculate styles and kill
Okay.
them. Kill them good.
Yeah.
I have some ideas that will probably help you there.
Okay.
But as soon as we have that, I suspect it's still not going to be enough. But the good bet is basically start removing stuff, find the thing. So do it by feel, what feels fastest, and then find the thing that had the most impact, and figure out a way to optimize the shit out of it. I also think that using the reusable list item view is going to be a benefit because it's not going to cause the whole thing to have to be re-rendered,
Okay.
which you basically just never actually want when you're using list view. List view works really well by reusing the previous view. If you're changing the context, which is causing the whole thing to re-render, you are basically screwing yourself out of the main performance thing. The problem is it has a little bit of a caveat for people, and so it isn't by default, but maybe it should be the one that is.
What's the caveat?
Currently, there's a trade-off between the things we can bind to and re-render optimally on the root element. And that's the trade-off, basically. Unexpected things might happen to you otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
The refactoring of the view layer, like I mentioned, will make that go away. But it's
Okay.
that class of thing. But I suspect if we made that change, we wouldn't have to re-render this here. We wouldn't have to re-render up to here. This would just change dynamically based on what the content had. This wouldn't have to re-render as well unless the is selected changed. This
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't have to unless the is healthy changed.
Mm-hmm.
This here may not have to. This here also should not have to because its context isn't changing. Nothing is relying on context. Everything is relying on properties. So again, because the proxy holds the context, everything binds to the proxy. So when we change the proxy, the re-render doesn't happen, and only the properties that changed, and then only the properties that changed will have to be re-rendered. So I think after we dig down the relayout things, maybe even before we do the deleting segments of your code, we should try out the reusable list item view.
Okay.
And go from there.
Okay.
Also, another thing here is, what version of Ember is this? I didn't actually check.
1.2.
1.2? Okay. You can do this. Did you see what I did or no? Can you
View tooltip?
I can make...
Is that?
You
Well,
don't have to do the global. You can instead say do tooltip and view helper smart enough to find. Basically, it's going to ask the dependency injection system, the container, hey, do you know of a tooltip view? And by default, the tooltip view is going to look at your namespace,
Okay.
take the name,
Cool.
capitalize it, and append view at the end.
Nice.
So is this going to be a performance difference? Absolutely not, but it's going to be a maintainability improvement.
Yeah.
Because now you don't have these global dependencies.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
All right. What is NA?
Not applicable. Oh, why are we using it?
But yeah. What is yes? What is that?
Oh, it's just,
helper
it's a little helper that says basically if that data is null, 0, or -1. Unfortunately, they were using it from the API side. So
okay.
They'll basically just pop out NA rather than doing not a number or something like that.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I suspect switching to the reusable thing will be a good start. But let's start with some of these tooltip views.
Yeah, I can probably remove all the tooltip views, to be honest. So okay, should we keep moving forward, or should I spend some time tonight and tomorrow morning basically doing what you suggested and then going over it tomorrow and seeing if
It is
there's any difference?
totally up to you, actually. I think I can give you a little bit more good information right now, and then we can move on, and we can meet up again tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good to me.
All right. Okay. So let me just. I have these pet peeves. I always make my multi-line arrays, my single-line arrays multi-line, because when diffs change,
Yep.
they're so hard to. I just can't. My brain can't parse those diffs.
Yep.
I don't worry. Like you can do whatever you want in your code. It's my brain doesn't parse the code unless it's.
Where are you looking?
Oh, can you not see my? Oh, I have for some reason it has stopped screen sharing. All right, here we go. Can you see that now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I think I like maximized and minimized the screen and then.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so first of all, rather than doing this dot element ID, it turns out that well, first of all, you should probably use this jQuery, but
Yes.
even better, this dot this is actually going to give you the current element.
Yeah, I recently discovered that.
Okay, so that is a good step in the right
Good.
direction, but I suspect your tooltip thing is actually trolling you in terms
Yeah.
of performance.
Yeah, I think
So-
I'll just get rid of it completely.
Sounds good, but let's confirm. So here, so on mouse enter, do this. On mouse leave, do that. Yeah, I would be careful about doing that. But either way, let's
Yeah.
just take a quick look and
We had
see
some
if
issues with getting sticky tooltips and stuff like that.
I can imagine. Where is your tooltip vendored,
Oh.
or is it part of Bootstrap?
There's the tooltip view or what?
The
There's a tooltip
dot
view file.
tooltip on jQuery, that's Bootstrap.
It is Bootstrap, yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's just take a quick look and see
Bootstrap
what.
has a jQuery plugin, but I do have a tooltip.
Alright.
Oh, that was what you're looking at. Okay.
Sounds good. So I want to just see here quickly. Let me close this guy. I resized my window and everything. All right. I just want to see what the tooltip thing is doing.
Sure, sure.
Okay, so basically when you do something like this, when this happens here, this will force a like it'll force dimensioning. So imagine I'm mousing over something and scrolling.
Right. Okay, because they're trying to do positioning of the tooltips, and so they're detecting.
Yeah, but you're scrolling and your mouse just might have happened to walk over something, and now it's going to be very sad. So basically we have like two different things colliding and being very sad.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
A good hack that I actually think isn't a bad hack is to make each one of your rows position relative and position your tooltips, which is CSS offsets. That way you don't have to calculate positioning.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
This works sometimes, doesn't work other times.
Yep.
Another thing to do is just not to display tooltips while scroll is happening. So basically have like a check, am I currently scrolling? If I'm scrolling, don't even do anything. Although that is a little tricky because then you have to realize, are they over something when it stops that they should display tooltip for?
Yeah.
Also, when you're doing hide, so this get position is likely one of the big offenders here.
Right.
It's basically doing crazy things. It's asking for offset width and offset height, which in my example, as I showed you, if you do this repeatedly, you're going to basically hurt yourself performance-wise.
Yeah.
But it's a good thing to check. Hey, just remove the tooltips. Is there a noticeable difference? No. Well, maybe there are bigger fish to fry. All right, so let's jump back to that view. And there's some other things I want to show you, but I want to derive it from like actual good examples in your code. All right, so not the view, the template. And I want to do VM row, is that it?
VMs row. It's VMs plural.
There we go. All right, okay. So Ember checkbox, not the end of the world. Shouldn't be the end of the world. All right. Well, while we're here, I'm going to take a look at your health icon helper.
Okay.
I want to.
Yeah.
In here, helpers.js, UID, humanize. Oh, is there a different place for helpers? This doesn't look like the right thing.
Let me check really quick.
Okay.
What was the helper called? Health icon?
Yeah. Oh, I found it.
You got it?
Yeah.
Okay, it isn't helpers. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's not the end of the world. Seems fine. I wonder if
in some of these cases where I have handlebars helpers, like I'm just concatenating some HTML. Would that ever be more or less performant if it's in the handlebars versus having JavaScript composed?
It'll be faster if you have it in raw handlebars. Because it's basically it's not gonna need to go through safe string.
Oh. Okay.
I mean, it's not the end of the world, but like there are a few more code paths it goes through otherwise.
Oh, so it'd be faster if I just left it in the handlebars template.
Yeah.
Oh.
I don't think it'll be noticeably faster.
Yeah.
But there are slightly less code paths. But I think basically killing these tooltip views, because for each one here we're creating multiple tooltips. Even if you were to just like, for example, just put it as a data attribute and bind it once or something. I don't know. Yeah. There's a few different things that could potentially be.
Right.
Another thing, if you can, instead of doing the branching in the template, do the branching in an item controller, you're going to get a little bit better throughput, because each of these if conditionals in your templates are branching at the handlebars level, which is never going to be as fast as just an if statement in a function.
Right.
So this would basically turn into something like if you have like a base foundation for what the icon looks like, or the tooltip icon, you could basically do like, I don't know, something tooltip, and then you have like a switch statement or an if statement inside of your item controller, or inside of your model class that's here, and it's gonna be quicker.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, you asked me before if the group helper is going to make all these things unbound by default. In theory, it should. Although in our apps, for example, we don't use the group helper. We use unbound everywhere instead.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I can't tell you for sure if, in fact, that's the case.
Yeah.
I think our stuff just existed before group helper, and we we use it much more sparingly. So we never really do. Hey, this whole blob should be should be grouped.
Sure.
We are very particular about these things. So I might be lying to you entirely when the group helper is actually helping or not. But I can't give you a good.
Okay. Yeah, maybe I'll check that out.
Yeah.
But I could just use unbound, even I think with some of these handlebars helpers.
Yeah, they're bound by default, right? And they're now you want them to be unbound. So another thing here again, tooltip. If you are keeping the tooltip, and then rather than title binding, it turns out that in new Ember, leaving something unquoted is a binding as well.
Yeah.
So this really is not performance.
You know, an RC1 or something, and those are definitely better.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally feel their pain. I have been Embering since some of our Ember apps. They don't look like Ember apps actually. They were very different back in the day. All right. Let's keep going and see if there's anything. Let's jump back to your tooltip view here. Tooltip view. All right. So this is, again, I was hoping I could get a good example of this, but I don't think, well, maybe. So basically when we're doing this, we're actually synchronously telling, during the mouse leave, at some point we're telling, hey, browser, hide this thing. And I don't think that's actually a bad problem in this place. This is actually fine. But often what you actually want to do is you want to say ember.run.schedule after render function.
Okay.
And all that really, so in this situation, I really don't think it's going to make that much of a difference. But for example, let's find something that has did insert elements, and let's go there. Because basically what this is saying, so are you familiar with the run loop?
A little bit, yeah. So is this saying, are you basically saying that let Ember do its stuff, and after the Ember run loop renders stuff, then hand it off to other JavaScripts?
Sort of. So basically, there are several queues. The two that we care about right now are after render and after render. So basically, during the rendering phase, Ember goes through and figures out all things it needs to render.
After render means after the current run loop?
No, it's in the same run loop. So there's multiple queues in the run loop.
Okay.
And there's 5 queues. So it's like there's a sync queue, an actions queue, router transitions queue, render, after render, destroy.
Okay.
And this basically lets us batch work. Remember how I said before, if we batch work, we can optimize stuff out, and we can also be more optimal when interacting with the browser.
Yeah.
So this. So basically, we render stuff. This is Ember basically setting HTML. But if we're doing jQuery stuff, imagine we're rendering, and we're going to render row 1, and then row 2, and then row 3. But during this process, every time we rendered row 1, in its did insert element, we're inserting jQuery code, and that jQuery code is reading from the DOM. Right. We're invalidating the DOM only to do it immediately afterwards again.
Right.
Only to do it immediately afterwards. So basically, after render lets us batch all of those did insert element calls.
Oh. Okay.
And then do it after all of the views have been rendered. Because by that point, hopefully, even if we have 100 jQuery calls that all call offset width or something, it doesn't matter because it's all rendered.
Okay.
Does that maybe make sense?
Yeah, that's a good explanation. Thank you.
No problem. But this is a bad example of this, so we should find a good example. Maybe so we can like not count that part. This what I'm going to propose now as part of the billable hours or whatever. But I'd like to go through my run loop guide work in progress with you if you're free.
Yeah.
Basically, sure. I want to get more feedback. Like, I'm basically just I said earlier to the other guys. I like to, if I am wasting or spending a lot of time on something, I like to make it so that I don't have to do it anymore. And helping people with run loop related stuff is a large amount of my time.
Yeah.
So if I can basically if I can make almost all the problems go away, and then for the rest of the problems provide good documentation, I don't have to do any work anymore, and that makes me happy. All right. Anyways, what is a good view I can grab here to?
Just any view.
That has a did insert element to do jQuery stuff.
I don't know. I'm actually trying not to use views if I don't need them, but.
That's a good idea.
Um.
Okay. Here's something I can show you. Okay. I believe I have maybe, is this actually true?
Oh, this is what my coworker just added, I think.
Okay.
This is, oh yeah, I think he just added this thing, which I'm not really happy about.
All right, so we should
yeah.
Okay, well, we're going to ignore this one. We're going to a different one. Here's a good one.
Are you looking for something that occurs frequently?
Date picker. Here's a good one.
Okay.
So basically, if we render a date picker, if it's only one time and we render one date picker per page, doesn't matter. If we're rendering 10 of them or 100 of them, it's going to matter, basically.
Yeah.
You're going to want to do this. Ember run schedule after render function date picker. Why? Because a date picker might do crazy stuff. It's just a good habit. Let's see if we can find another one here quickly.
Now, if I was doing like an inline spark line, say in the row using like D3 or something, would that be a case where you want to do after render as well?
Yes, you actually want to do two things in that case. One depends on if your data is bound, and the other is not. So if the data is bound, you want to actually do an observer and a schedule once after render, so that if the data changes 10 times in that one run loop, it only renders once. And then in the place where you render, you want to schedule to render once after render, so you can let Ember draw all its stuff and then let D3 do its thing.
Yeah. Okay.
List view, adjust height. This seems all right, except okay. So here's a thing. This observers are synchronous. So if your height changes multiple times, you're gonna update. Yeah. You're gonna update the DOM multiple times. So you actually want to throttle this.
Yes.
So you don't want it to happen more. So basically, if you go and resize the window, you're going to get resize events that are at even faster than 60 frames a second.
Yep.
And basically, you can throttle this. So you can do Ember run throttle function.
Perfect. Yeah, that's another thing.
And you can do like throttle it to 50 milliseconds because no human's going to basically notice.
Yep.
It's a great way to cheat. So basically, if you're doing anything that touches the DOM multiple times, consider throttling it. You don't have to, but you can consider it. Another thing is imagine that in your Ember app code, height can change. It goes from 4 to 5 to 6, but in the same run loop. And a run loop usually is like user data thing. Well, you can actually do the Ember run once thing here as well, because the observer is going to fire every time, but you only want to do it once.
Okay.
Which is a good thing. But here's another thing. Basically, turns out computed properties and bindings do this for you automatically. So you get that kind of for free by using Ember. But
I'm sorry.
I think your throttle idea, the throttle idea
does that for me?
The computed properties will do that for you. Computed properties only invalidate, and then they basically during the render phase they get computed. So I'll give you a quick example. First name.
So I'm sorry. Are you saying that that's a difference between observers and computed properties?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, observers fire synchronously right now.
Gotcha.
Computer properties, they invalidate. So for example, I'll give you a good example. First name, last name. Okay, so basically the canonical computer property example. Right? Everyone can write this in their sleep.
Yeah.
All right. So here's a. You know, what are we doing? Let's just. I actually have this exact example in that thing I want to show you. So here, just jump on this guy here, and it'll be syntax. Let me actually just drop this into a gist, and then it'll be syntax highlighted.
Okay.
Good thing I started that today. Alright, pretty soon you're gonna. Alright. Okay, so if you scroll down to search for let's look at another example. It has like user.js, first name, last name. Do you see it or no?
Where am I supposed to be looking? Oh, I see the gist now. Sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
You should be like, let's look at another example, and then there's user.
You are sharing your old VI window. If you're looking at
All right, there we go. Can you see this?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, example. Rather than me writing it out, here it is.
Sure.
All right, our template looks like this. No run loop, nothing fancy. Not cool, basically, right? We're doing rendering twice when we don't want to. We want to batch. With the run loop, batch, batch, great, fantastic. With the run loop part 2, they cancel each other out, nothing happens. Now, how does this actually happen? How does this work? Well, it turns out that a computed property doesn't compute when its dependencies change. It just gets marked as invalid. Gets marked as stale.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, our template has first name and full name. When our template renders, it says, hey, I'm going to get full name and render it. So it gets full names, render it. But full name's like, whoa, 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 my first name changed, my last name changed, and someone wants me to compute, well, I'm going to have to quickly calculate myself once. Done. Now, if in fact we render this again and the names didn't change, full name will just instantly return the old full name. So computed properties are lazy. You can basically, their dependencies, first name and last name, can change 100 times in a single run loop, and this callback will only be invoked when this guy gets invoked to be read.
Yep.
All right. Observers, though, if I have an observer on Tom, on first name here, it will change once here, and for this one down here, it'll change twice. And observers will fire immediately. So sometimes, especially if you're drawing graphs, you want to throttle by doing an Ember run once to make sure that you don't troll yourself with repeated updates. Anyways, so let's find an example where you're doing just layout, set height, set height, set height. Seems all right. So something that I do is I actually inject a viewport into a bunch of my views, and then this binds specific dimension attributes to that viewport directly. So rather than using an observer here, I would actually make height a computed property.
Okay.
That does controller. So basically,
Can you share your window?
Oh, damn it! Sorry. Thanks for. I'm just going to share my whole desktop. It seems like a better idea. All right, there we go. All right. So I actually infrequently use. So basically, using observers to set properties is doing the work of computed properties yourself in a less efficient way.
Yeah.
So rather than doing this, adjust height at some random time, we could just do this. And don't do it at a random time. Don't even enqueue it. Done. So basically now whenever the DOM reads it, it just computes it and reads it. And then writes it to the DOM. You don't need to detect that it's changing. All that's done for you. But remember, if your height changes a few times in that same run loop, it only gets updated once.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
So even if it wasn't happening multiple times, you have now basically by using observers, you are re-implementing a poor version of what computer properties are doing for you.
Okay. Cool.
Another thing is you don't want to do controller's application height. You really want to do that thing I suggested and do like have a viewport property. And then you want to do something like and this way you don't have to reach really far away from your view to grab some information from various things. Basically, if your views reach into their controllers, like I'm seeing in a few places here, you're creating extra coupling and you're creating extra work for yourself. Sometimes you have to, but mostly you don't really want to.
So can you explain to me how your viewport property is that using some sort of dependency injection?
Yeah, exactly. So basically I'm going to have an initializer, and it's going to be called name viewport, initialize function container application. You don't have to remember this. I have to remember this. You don't have to.
Yeah.
And now basically every view that's correctly set up using the internal dependency injection framework, so if you're using correct APIs, they will all get a viewport thing that they can just bind to if they need to.
Okay, cool.
What I'd probably do for this guy here is it would be like an object that like, it's one object in a single place that binds to various dimension-related information, and it then is a single place where you can do throttling and stuff. So the viewport thing is something that I only recommend for sort of advanced UIs that need to be aware of viewport information.
Mm-hmm.
But when in fact I need to use it, this is the pattern that I use. And then these computations here all become simpler, and you don't have to reach up to controllers, which basically makes your app hard to maintain. But I'm gonna just blow this away so I can keep looking at other stuff. Okay, so let's. I would also suggest trying to keep your naming conventions consistent. So dashes are the way we're going to recommend going forward.
Okay.
Dashes for everything.
Dashes for everything. Yeah, it always changes.
Dashes on all the things. This hopefully won't change. The idea basically being if we settle on one naming convention, we don't have to learn anything new. So
yeah.
Dashes make everyone happy, or happy enough. Yeah, so for this guy, display graph, I would also do the after render thing. Okay, let's see what else we can dig up here. Dig up some dirt. So what is this? What is going on here?
Which one are you looking at? Sorry, my connection's still. It's a little blurry screen.
Oh, sorry. I'm still looking at some of your views, but let's jump over to your controllers. Is that working, or is that not showing up for you?
Yeah, it's working. It's just a little blurry. Which file are you looking at?
I am looking at the application controller currently.
Okay.
And I see is resize handler.
Right.
But I'm not seeing anything terrible right now. I'm just quickly zooming through here to see if I can find something to point out. It looks like you're using actions, which is very nice. These bindings, where you're binding to globals, I would recommend not doing that, and instead, so it is MT Wilson installed binding. I would strongly recommend, first of all, I would strongly recommend using computer properties instead of bindings. So bindings work, but they have race conditions. They depend on the order that stuff exists and doesn't exist. Using computer properties, they're lazy, so they're safe to lots of these race conditions.
Okay.
Good. I would also recommend either injecting MT Wilson into your controllers, or making it another controller and simply using needs to depend on it rather than depending on it globally.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. That's just was kind of the first implementation before we were doing Ember data stuff, which made all the other stuff easier.
Yeah, no worries. You don't have to feel guilty or anything. I understand. All right, so this is I'm now in contextual graph controller. All right, and I'm looking at selected nodes. So first of all, I see current route name binding. Well, I would recommend, if you have to do this, I would recommend using a computer property instead, a computed alias, for example.
Okay.
But let's look at selected nodes. Selected nodes is actually, I'm going to write it out here, it's a computed filter of controllers.nodes, and the property is selected true. So not only is it shorter, we've actually just told Ember now that, so in this bottom example here, every time, so basically here, let me tell you a crazy story. So we have made the situation better. But in the past, when you started writing Ember, computer properties were not lazy, and every time one of these properties were to change, you would rerun this callback. Luckily, this doesn't happen anymore. So basically, if you loaded a whole bunch of nodes, for each is selected that changed, we would refilter the whole list. So you can see where you've had this explosion of changes. Not ideal. That's definitely terrible, but that was our fault, basically. So now, basically, when this happens, we only compute selected nodes when it's retrieved. So when any one of these changes and the view gets updated and we read from this, then we filter the whole list. But there's still a thing we can do better, and that is, what if we have a list of 100 things, but only 3 of them changed? Why do we need to refilter the whole list and create a whole new array? Because if we create the whole new array, the view has to treat it almost as a whole new everything and re-render everything. So instead, you can use a computed filter, and what that will do is it'll guarantee a single array's return from selected node, and all we'll actually do is we'll mutate that array as needed. So if we have one of these nodes, I screwed that up, should be at each nodes there. One of these guys changed, well, we're only going to send the ones that changed through the filter property and then figure out where in the list they belong or where the ones in the list where they need to be removed from and do that operation. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm just trying to, so are you saying that using computed, Ember.computed is different than what currently exists there?
Yep. Because this one here, if any of these changes, it has to resort and refilter the whole list.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And not only that, it's going to return a new array every time, which is going to cause your view to update.
Right.
So if in fact you use the macro version, so selected nodes, Ember, computed, filter, and we're going to say first, what is the thing we're filtering across? So first of all, we're going to filter across controller's nodes, which kind of tells me that this filter should live on the nodes controller instead. And then what are we going to filter across? Well, we're going to say, hey, is selected for each entry true? But this really, I believe, should live on the nodes controller. So not only is this cleaner, it's faster, and it's going to be quicker for rendering. And not only that, but we can
that lives on the nodes controller.
I would make that a property that lives on the nodes controller, yes.
Does that affect performance?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Organization. Yeah, no. This guy's another one, but it's a common thing where we build web apps that have lists that get sorted and filtered. So the cool thing also is if you compose these, so you have selected nodes, which is actually it filters over the sorted nodes. The deltas get sent down the pipeline. So if only one of your nodes changes, it goes through the sort filter, then it goes through the filter, and then it goes through and it just propagates its single changes throughout. So you don't cause these crazy churns as you have arrays being rebuilt and resorted repeatedly.
Yeah, it sounds like I need to use some of those new sort and filter helpers.
Yeah, not only are they faster, but they are much cleaner to look at. Plus, they can continue to get faster, whereas the other code can't. This is okay, but you're not actually handling failures here, right? So if a failure occurs, no one's gonna know.
Well, I'm sorry. The caveat is that I didn't write this particular piece of code.
Well, when I'm saying you, I'm saying it with not pointing fingers.
Forgive me if I have to get up to speed on what you're looking at.
Yeah, no worries. Let's get this one. It seems a little bit gnarly. All right.
Now that was a funny one because if you see the cabana in there, that's where we're actually interacting with an Angular app.
I see. Ideally, you don't want to do view stuff in controllers. I don't think I need to explain.
Which one are you looking at right now?
Dashboard new status controller.js.
Okay, I think that's the one that the coworker wrote that, and I told him he did it wrong, so I redid it. I'm not sure we're actually using that file.
All right. The key thing is with coworkers or people that are new, just being able to show them where all the things go. Usually, they put stuff where they know where it works because it's just easier. and they don't know where the rest of it goes, and then they're pressure, right? So, all right, let's
So
just see
dashboard, maybe you can look at dashboard status rather than...
dashboard status looks pretty nice.
Yeah, status is plural, I think, is the one we're using.
Oh, dashboard status looks really good. There's nothing in it.
That's the one where it's using those highly nested routes that you notice.
Oh yeah, tell me about that. It seems great. Oh, here's another place.
The data structure was that supposedly we're supposed to be handling an infinite nested tree, and which is sort of ridiculous. So I think that's why my coworker he sort of knew, so he heard this requirement of needing to support infinite nesting. So he tried to do this really complicated method and handle everything himself. And I was like, look, we just need to really depend on Ember routing for this. So I just threw together like that 20-level nested routing, and it was really, really easy to implement. It looks a little silly, but...
I wonder if we support globbed routing. I've never tried, but that might be a better way to support that. Again,
yeah, that'd be
in
interesting.
Flavor Edit Controller, you got a few awesome places to do filters.
Okay.
And there's also Ember computed equal. Ember computed equal. So
yeah.
The macros in general just look a lot nicer, and in general we can actually optimize them if we need to.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't aware that there were real optimizations. It sounds like there are optimizations in the case of you observing arrays, I guess.
Yeah, there's big optimizations in you observing arrays.
Great.
But also for some of the ones that don't appear complicated, but they're one-liners, if you use the macro, you convey the intent. And some of them are not actually obvious. Now here's one thing I'm going to show you, and then we can bail or we can continue to talk. And that is there's read-only.
Right.
So sometimes you have a computer property, because computer properties are actually bidirectional.
Right.
And if you set the computer property and you don't actually want to, you basically just stomp on that value unexpectedly. So marking them as read-only sometimes is appropriate. Because sometimes you have bugs where you propagate changes back up. So for example, Ember data models flags, they're all read-only because you should never write to them. If you write to them, you've basically broken your app.
Now, I think that it seems like a lot of our stuff actually would be read-only. Does it give us any performance improvements if we don't have to set up the other side of the computer property?
Yeah, so if you have a computed alias and instead you do a computed one-way, there's a slight optimization that occurs because it doesn't need to do the bidirectional stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not super massive. So on your controllers, it doesn't.
Sure, that's all in the back end.
There's not that many of them, but on your models, for example, it might matter because you are going to be making many models. Right. So if you only have like 6 controllers, it's not really the end of the world if you create a couple extra bindings. But if you're creating 6,000 or 2,000 models, you're going to have to be a little bit sparing with how something happens with those models.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So is there anything else specific?
Well, if we're talking about models, then I wonder if we should look at our VM model, for instance.
Okay. Also, when you're starting up, are you noticing some problems where Ember data is taking a little bit of extra time?
Yeah. Well, so if you load up the app initially and it goes straight to the dashboard, it might be something like Ember will actually render sort of an aggregate portlet as 0, let's say 0 VMs, and then it'll update right after that and say 129 VMs.
That sounds like that's Ajax, though, waiting, right?
It might be, yeah. That may just be a case where I need to put some different promise into my model hook or something.
Yeah. It sounds like it. Okay.
And again, yeah, it sounds like, I mean, my problems are mostly in the view layer and dealing with a DOM, so. Yeah,
I'm just aware of a big performance issue with Ember data that I have a patch for.
Oh.
I just haven't put it in because it is kind of janky, but like there's a way to make it not use the run loop as much as it does. So if you load like thousands of models, sometimes you'll spend a lot of time inside the run loop. So if you notice that, let me know. I'll point you to the PR you can give a try on.
Okay.
Link it to you now. But I think you have bigger performance problems than that one. Although that one likely affects initial page load cost or
Huh.
Every time you get a big dump from the database, it'll be a big.
Well, yeah, because we have this polling thing, so actually that does kind of freeze our app or the UI when we do another big call to Ember data.
Okay, I'll just link you to that patch. Likely it or something like it is going to end up in Ember data.
I guess I'm not sure.
Emergent...
The reason the UI is freezing is probably because of the same issue that we're having with rendering list view.
Yeah, I think it's multiple things.
Yeah.
Here's the quick link for that guy.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so if in fact, after you have your rendering stuff improved, if in fact, when you're doing your profiling, you notice time spent in backburner, the run loop,
right?
You notice stuff around push unique and around loading a lot of data, it is definitely this.
Okay.
So basically, I've turned like a crazy expensive n squared operation into like 01.
Nice.
The reason it's not in yet is I want to see if I can make the run loop just do this by default all the time, so it never has to worry about this.
Right.
But I ran out of time, so I need to find some more time to do that. All right. Do you have any specific questions about your model, or?
No, I don't think so. I think the model is probably fine. I mean,
yeah, it seems okay.
We have some issues with like sort of organization. So a lot of the kind of computed properties, they used to be all on the model, but now I think we're trying to move them over to the item controller.
Yeah, I tend to move them to controllers, but I keep the logic in separate files, basically. So if I have like crazy logic like this, I'll keep it in a separate function that's outside of it. It's just easier to digest. It's kind of nice.
Okay, well, it sounds like I should try out the reusable list item view first, and definitely get rid of all those views for tooltips and see what performance gains I can get with that.
I would probably say give it a try first. Give it a try first. See if it automatically makes an improvement. I suspect it has the possibility to, although there's a lot of other stuff going on, that its impact might not be as great. Right. If you don't notice something, I would then remove it and then try and prune views that you don't actually need. Yeah. And then come back and see if in fact it does work well. And then tomorrow let's sync up, and if you ran into some trouble, I can help you more directly.
Okay. And then the last question maybe would be, I guess before we had this discussion, my main performance test was just manually scrolling up and down and trying to get a feeling for how much I felt the performance was crappy or good. And I mean, I'm wondering if there's maybe a helper. I know Evil Trout has some view rendering kind of helpers that'll spit out some multi-second how long it takes to render things. I guess so my question is, should I use something like that, or I guess now it looks like maybe I can just use the timeline for some of those types of things.
I would use both, right? So using that render speed or whatever he has is definitely useful.
It'd be nice for me to say, like, go back to my boss and say, hey, I improved the performance by X%.
Yep. I would use the render speed for the metrics, but remember, unfortunately, that does incur a penalty itself. But if you're measuring with it on and then with it on again, it's going to hopefully give you a somewhat consistent output between those 2 points. But another thing to look at is on a machine that's running sort of the same performance-wise and not extra under heavy load or unexpected heavy load, your timeline information is going to also be valuable, because you can say I'm rendering at frames per second versus different frames per second. And also there's in your Chrome developer tools, you can enable frames per second in the top right-hand corner of your browser window.
Oh.
And that's a good metric to go by too. So you can say I've improved the rendering speed by this, but I think if you tell your boss you've changed the frames per second from 12 to 20 or to 30 or to 40 or to 50, that'll be... People understand frames per second a little bit, or at least like they pretend to understand frame per second a little bit better. If you open up your dev tools, hit the gear, there's like a little check. Depending on which version of Chrome, there's like a checkbox you can set that gives you extra rendering information, such as frames per second.
Okay, cool. I didn't know about that. Thanks.
No problem. It was fun. Let me know if I can give you a hand.
Extremely helpful. I have a couple avenues to
Yeah, no
pursue.
worries.
So do you want to chat tomorrow as
No worries.
well?
Yeah, let me know. Depends how much time you have or want. Let me know. I'm also available in IRC and stuff, doing my normal
Okay,
open source
great.
rounds. So feel free to ping me. Unfortunately, like longer sessions like this, I can't. I should likely not do unless it's through something like this because
Of course.
um, if in fact I'm doing this, I can't be working on the open source stuff, which is
Yep.
benefiting less people, but it's benefiting you more. So there's like this sort of trade-off between these various
Cool.
things. But
So you hang out
I'll
in
gladly help out as I
Ember.js,
can.
IRC, and that sort of thing.
Yeah, pop by. It's a good community. Report issues, stuff like that. People help each other out a lot.
Great.
But if you need sort of an in-depth thing such as this, I love to do it.
Great. Thank
I
you so
enjoy
much. I
helping
appreciate it.
people. Yeah, totally. And if your team, for example, needs training or something, we do training and Tilda does training as well. Tilda probably makes a lot of sense because they're like in your city. It makes little
Yeah, no
sense for
kidding.
us to come down.
Yeah.
But you'll get good training if, in fact, your business thinks it's a good value prop. I would say it'd be a great value prop. But anyways, ping me tomorrow sometime. I'm not sure what time works for you, but we can plan
I'm
for
open
another.
all day. Yeah.
Sounds. I think I am free in the afternoon. In the evening, I'm busy, but early afternoon probably works well for me. So
Okay.
maybe around noon or 1 your time.
Okay. I think that might work. Yeah, I have breakfast, but I should be open by then. Okay. Let me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
sounds good.
I'll give a few of these things a try and see how it goes, and I'll ping you.
Sounds good. Should I sort of plan to put like a 10-minute block aside tomorrow, or an hour, or a
Oh
few hours,
yeah.
or what?
Um, maybe like a half-hour block.
Just so that I can keep it blocked.
Yeah. Half-hour block at noon my time, 3 your time,
Yep,
something like that.
works for me. Yeah,
Great.
works for me. Just feel free to let me know if you're running a little bit late, and then I'll just
Yeah. Hopefully,
I'll do
my
something else
internet will
and
be working
meet
next
you
time.
another time. All right. Well, that was great. It was very nice to meet you. And are you going to be at EmberConf in a few
I
months?
will. I have my ticket already.
Oh,
So hopefully I should be
fantastic. I still gotta get mine.
Better get on it.
Feel free to reach out to me or bug me when I see you in person. So,
All right, deal.
all right, yep. I'll talk to you
Okay,
later. Have yourself a
talk
nice
to you
evening,
tomorrow.
and hopefully
Thanks.
I helped a little bit. Right? Hopefully I provided some good context and some good benchmarking
Yeah,
tools and
absolutely.
profiling tooling help. So,
Yeah, this has been very valuable. I
all right,
appreciate
awesome,
it. Okay, thanks.
fantastic. All right, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, bye.